The envelope sat on my kitchen counter, its gold embossing catching the morning light in our Seattle loft. It was heavy. The kind of cardstock that screamed wealth and tradition, with my name Sarah Whitaker written in elegant calligraphy. I stood there, coffee mug in hand, staring at it like it might bite. It was an invitation to my cousin Emily's wedding in Napa Valley, California, a place of rolling vineyards and sun-soaked dreams. But the thought of facing my family again twisted my stomach into knots. I could already hear their voices. Uncle George, the patriarch, with his booming disdain. Lillian, with her sharp, condescending smiles. My cousin Nathan, always ready with a cruel jab. They'd see the same Sarah they'd written off a failure, a nobody who'd thrown away her birthright. I'd spent years proving them wrong, building Canvas Collective with Michael, creating murals that lit up Seattle's streets, mentoring kids who reminded me of my younger self. But would they see that? Or would they just see the girl who ran away, the one who didn't fit their mold? I carried the invitation to our loft studio, where Michael was working on code for our latest project. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, catching the auburn flecks in his dark hair. He's my safe harbor, the one who makes the world feel possible. Em's getting married, I said, holding out the envelope. He took it, his eyes scanning the ornate crest. Your cousin Emily? He asked, setting aside his laptop. I nodded. She wants me there. But I'm terrified. He took my hands, his touch steady. What are you afraid of, Sarah? I laughed, a shaky sound. That they'll tear me apart, remind me I'm nothing. Michael's expression softened, but his voice was firm. You're Sarah Whitaker, creative director of Canvas Collective. Your art's in 3 major galleries. You've built a life that matters. They can't take that from you. His words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of doubt. He was right. I wasn't going back to beg for their approval. I was going for Emily, and maybe for myself to face the ghosts I'd left behind. In Seattle, I found my place. I organize community mural projects, where kids and artists paint stories on city walls. Last month, we transformed a gray underpass into a vibrant scene of Mount Rainier, with local teens adding their own designs. Their pride, their laughter, it's what fuels me. I've also started a scholarship fund for young artists, helping them chase dreams my family once called foolish. This is the life I've built, far from Palm Beach's expectations. But the invitation felt like a test. Could I walk back into that world and hold my head high? I sat with the decision for 3 days. The envelope, a constant presence on our counter. I'd jot notes in my phone, a habit I picked up from a mentor to process my feelings. I am enough, I wrote. I am here for Emily. Those words became my armor. Michael suggested a compromise. I'd attend the ceremony alone, and he'd join me for the reception. You'll have time with Emily, he said, and I'll be there when the family's at their worst. It was perfect. His support gave me courage, but this was my moment to face my past. Emily, the one person in my family who'd ever truly seen me, was getting married, and she wanted me there. After 8 years of silence, 8 years of building a life far from the suffocating expectations of the Whitaker dynasty in Palm Beach, Florida, this single piece of paper felt like a bridge to a past I'd tried to leave behind. I chose a teal dress, elegant but not flashy, and the opal necklace Michael gave me last year. It's rare. Like you, he'd said, fastening it around my neck. The stone shimmered, shifting colors with the light, a reminder of my own resilience. I packed a small painting for Emily, a scene of our childhood garden, roses blooming under a summer sky. It felt like a piece of my heart, a gift to honor our bond. As I booked my flight to Napa, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. This wasn't about proving myself to them. It was about showing up as me fully, unapologetically. So friends, have you ever faced a moment where you had to return to a place that made you feel small? A family gathering, a hometown, a memory? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow this journey. It's a story of courage, of reclaiming who you are, and of the power of showing up, no matter what anyone else thinks. This is just the beginning, and I'm ready to share what happened when I walked into that wedding, heart open, ready to face whatever came next. I'm Sarah, 34 years old, and to my family I'm the black sheep. The dreamer who ran away. the disappointment who traded a life of privilege for paintbrushes and a tiny apartment in Seattle. They thought I'd crashed and burned, that I was scraping by as a starving artist, too stubborn to admit I'd failed. What they didn't know was how much I'd grown, how I'd carved out a life filled with purpose and love. I'm not just an artist anymore, I'm the co-founder of Canvas Collective, a company that's changing how artists share their work with the world. My paintings hang in galleries from Seattle to Portland, and I'm married to Michael, a man who believes in me more than I sometimes believe in myself. But that invitation, with its handwritten note from Emily, "Please come, Sarah. I miss you," stirred something deep inside me. A mix of hope, fear, and unresolved pain. The Whitakers are old money, the kind of family whose name opens doors in Palm Beach's gilded circles. Our estate, with its marble fountains and manicured gardens, was a monument to tradition. Growing up, every choice was scrutinized. The schools we attended, the friends we made, the futures we were supposed to chase. My father, Edward, was a titan in finance, and my mother, Clara, never quite fit his world. Her middle-class roots were a quiet scandal. Her love for painting a quirk the family tolerated but never embraced. I inherited her hazel eyes and her restless creativity, traits that marked me as different in a family of blue-eyed financiers. When they divorced, I was 11, and my father's wealth ensured I stayed in Palm Beach, far from my mother's new life in Asheville, North Carolina. Those twice-yearly visits with her were my only escape, moments of color and laughter in a world of rigid expectations. The invitation brought it all back. The whispers at family dinners, the sidelong glances when I sketched instead of studying stock portfolios. My stepmother, Lillian, and her perfect children, Grace and Ethan, became the family's pride, while I was the problem child, the one who didn't belong. Only Emily, 2 years younger, saw me for who I was. We'd hide in the rose garden, spinning tales of adventure, her laughter a balm against the family's judgment. "You're going to be someone incredible, Sarah," she'd say, her blue eyes bright as she pored over my drawings. Those memories made the invitation impossible to ignore. Emily was my anchor, the one who never judged me for dreaming differently. How could I not go? Picture a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, where the air smells of salt and privilege, and every polished surface reflects a legacy of wealth. That's where I grew up, in the heart of the Whitaker dynasty, a family whose name carried weight in boardrooms and country clubs alike. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and this is the story of my childhood, a world of glittering expectations and quiet rebellion, where I learned early on that being different came with a cost. Emily saw me, not as a failure, but as someone with something to offer. Those moments were my refuge, a reminder that I wasn't as alone as I felt, but the pressure never let up. Family dinners were interrogations. "What are your plans, Sarah?" Uncle George would ask, his voice heavy with expectation. He was my father's brother, the family patriarch after my father's death, and he ruled the Whitaker investment firm with an iron grip. To him, daughters were for strategic marriages, not dreams. My interest in art was a quirk to be tolerated, not encouraged. "You're a Whitaker," he'd say. "Act like one." But acting like a Whitaker meant burying who I was. I'd retreat to my room, writing poetry about freedom, about a life where I could paint without shame. I hid those pages from Lillian's prying eyes, knowing she'd call them childish. When I was 18, my father died suddenly, stroke that shook the family to its core. I was still reeling when Uncle George stepped in, redirecting my college fund to Grace and Ethan. "You'll do fine at a state school," he said, dismissing my dreams of studying art history at an Ivy League college. At a family dinner, he scoffed when I shared my major. "Art history? What's that going to get you? A job at a museum gift shop?" Lillian's laugh cut deeper than his words. I felt like I was shrinking, my dreams reduced to a punchline. Emily was my lifeline through it all. We'd sneak into the estate's library, reading poetry and dreaming of lives beyond Palm Beach. She wanted to travel, to see the world. I wanted to create, to paint stories that mattered. "You're going to be someone extraordinary," she'd whisper, her belief in me a quiet rebellion against the family's verdict. But even Emily couldn't shield me from the growing sense that I didn't belong. The Whitakers wanted perfection, and I was anything but. My grades were solid, but not stellar. I was polite, but not polished. My passion for art was a flaw, not a gift. By my late teens, The weight of their expectations was suffocating. I'd lie awake at night, my journal open, writing about a life where I could be free. I started sketching in secret, filling notebooks with scenes of oceans and forests, places where I could breathe. Those drawings were my resistance, my way of holding on to myself in a world that wanted to reshape me. But the family's judgment was relentless. At every gathering, I was the odd one out, the girl who didn't measure up. "When are you going to get serious, Sarah?" Lillian would ask, her voice laced with pity. I wanted to scream that I was serious about art, about my dreams, but I knew they'd never listen. Looking back, those years shaped me in ways I didn't understand then. The pain of being the outsider taught me resilience. The stolen moments with my mother and Emily taught me hope. I didn't know it yet, but I was building the strength to break free, to build a life that was mine. Have you ever felt like you didn't fit in your own family? Like your dreams were a language they couldn't speak? Share your story in the comments below. The sprawling estate, with its marble fountains and rose gardens, wasn't just a home. It was a stage, and every Whitaker was expected to play their part perfectly. For me, that role never fit, no matter how hard I tried. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I took those first steps away from Palm Beach, toward a life that was truly my own. This is just the beginning, and I'm here to share the journey of finding courage, chasing dreams, and proving that being different is your greatest strength. My father, Edward, was a giant in finance, a man whose handshake could seal million-dollar deals. My mother, Clara, was his opposite, a gentle soul with hazel eyes and a love for painting that never quite belonged in his world. She came from a modest family in Asheville, North Carolina, a fact the Whitakers never let her forget. Their marriage was less about love and more about strategy, a union that strengthened the family's social standing. I inherited her artistic spirit and her eyes, both of which marked me as an outsider in a family of blue-eyed financiers. By the time I was 11, their marriage unraveled. My mother wanted to take me to Asheville, where we could paint and live freely, but my father's wealth and connections ensured I stayed in Palm Beach. The divorce was a wound that never fully healed, and my twice-yearly visits to her became my only escape. Those visits were like stepping into color after months of gray. In Asheville, we'd sit on her porch, painting mountain landscapes as the sun set. She'd tell me stories of artists who defied expectations, her voice soft but fierce. "You don't have to be what they want, Sarah," she'd say, brushing paint from my cheek. "You just have to be you." Back in Palm Beach, I clung to those words, scribbling poetry in a secret journal I hid under my bed. It was my sanctuary, a place to pour out dreams the Whitakers would never understand. But the estate was a pressure cooker. Every dinner, every gala, every choice was about upholding the family name. My grades were good, but not exceptional. I was pretty, but not poised enough for debutante balls. Worst of all, I had no interest in finance or law, the only paths deemed worthy of a Whitaker. When my father remarried, everything changed. Lillian, his new wife, was a glamorous widow, 15 years younger, with a sharp smile and sharper ambitions. She brought her children, Grace and Ethan, into our home, and they slipped effortlessly into the Whitaker mold. Grace was all charm and perfect manners. Ethan was the heir apparent, already talking stocks at 14. I became the odd one out, the problem child who didn't belong. Lillian's critiques were relentless. "Sarah, that dress is so bohemian," she'd say, her voice dripping with disdain. "You could at least try to look like a Whitaker." My father, distracted by his new family, grew distant, his disappointment a quiet weight I carried daily. The only light in those years was Emily, my cousin, 2 years younger. She had the classic Whitaker look, blonde hair, blue eyes, but none of their judgment. We'd escape to the rose garden, where the world felt softer. There, we'd invent stories of faraway places, her laughter chasing away my insecurities. "Your drawings are magic, Sarah," she'd say, her fingers tracing my sketches of imagined cities. "You're going to make the world more beautiful." I was 22 when I left everything behind. The Whitaker estate in Palm Beach, Florida, with its marble halls and suffocating expectations, had been my cage for too long. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and this is the story of how I broke free, trading a life of privilege for a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington, and a chance to become who I was meant to be. It wasn't easy. It wasn't glamorous. But it was the moment I chose myself, my dreams, and a future that felt like mine. Those nights were my rebellion, my way of proving that art wasn't just a hobby, it was my life. I started a poetry journal too, scribbling verses about freedom and resilience, words I'd once hidden from Lillian's critical eye. Now, they were my battle cry. Then I met Michael. It was at a small art show in a gritty Seattle gallery where I'd scraped together enough courage to display one painting, a swirling abstract of the Pacific Ocean. He stood in front of it for what felt like forever, his brown eyes tracing every brushstroke. "This feels alive," he said when I approached, my heart racing. Like it's holding a story no one else can see. We talked until the gallery closed, then spilled into a diner, sharing fries and dreams. Michael was a software developer from Boise, Idaho, who'd fought his way through Stanford on scholarships. He'd just sold a small app and was dreaming of blending tech with art. His passion, his belief in possibility, felt like a mirror to my own. Our connection grew fast. Michael saw me not the Whitaker failure, but the artist with something to say. He'd show up at mural projects, hauling paint cans and cheering us on. One rainy afternoon, he took me to Olympic National Park, where we hiked through moss-covered forest to the Pacific coast. There, with waves crashing and rain soaking our clothes, he proposed. No ring, just a promise, his hand steady in mine. "I want to build a life with you, Sarah," he said. "Not the one your family wanted, but the one you choose." We married a year later on an Oregon beach, with only the sea and a few friends as witnesses. Emily sent a set of watercolor paints, her note simple. "For your next adventure." My family didn't know. To them, I was still the runaway, lost to her foolish dreams. Those early years in Seattle weren't easy. There were months when rent was a stretch, when rejection letters from galleries piled up, when I doubted myself. But every mural, every poem, every late-night talk with Michael reminded me why I'd left. I wasn't running away. I was running towards something. A life where I could create, where I could be me without apology. I started teaching art to kids at a community center, watching their faces light up as they painted their own stories. One girl, a shy 14-year-old named Mia, reminded me of myself, full of dreams but afraid to voice them. "Keep painting," I told her. "Your voice matters." Her smile was worth more than any Whitaker approval. Leaving Palm Beach was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the bravest. It taught me that freedom comes with a price: loneliness, uncertainty, the ache of leaving people like Emily behind. But it also brought me to a life I could call my own. I wasn't just surviving. I was building something real. A life rooted in art, in love, in purpose. Years later, when Emily's wedding invitation arrived for her Napa Valley wedding, I'd faced the family I'd left behind. But that's a story for another day. Have you ever had to walk away from something safe to chase a dream? Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a hometown that didn't see you. Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this journey unfolded. How leaving Palm Beach led me to a life I never could have imagined, and how facing my family again would test everything I'd built. This is about finding the courage to choose yourself, no matter the cost. Stick with me, because the best is yet to come. That choice, born in a single night of defiance, set me on a path I never could have imagined on that led to love, purpose, and a life I'd fight for. The breaking point came at a family dinner, the kind where crystal glasses clinked and every word was a test. Uncle George, the Whitaker patriarch, sat at the head of the table, his blue eyes cold as he offered me an internship at the family's investment firm. "It's time you grew up, Sarah," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'd heard it all before. My art was a hobby, my dreams were childish, my future was meant to serve the Whitaker legacy. But that night, something snapped. "I'm not interested," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. The room went silent. Lillian, my stepmother, gasped. My stepsister, Grace, smirked. Uncle George's face turned red. "You're throwing away your birthright," he roared. "You'll regret this." I didn't argue. I didn't plead. That night, I packed a suitcase with my sketchbooks, a few clothes, and $2,000 I'd saved from waitressing at a local cafe. I bought a bus ticket to Seattle, a city I'd only seen in pictures, drawn to its rain-soaked streets and vibrant art scene. As the bus pulled away from Palm Beach, I felt a weight lift, but fear crept in too. I was leaving behind everything I'd ever known: my father's legacy, my cousin Emily's quiet support, even the faint hope of my mother's visits in Asheville, North Carolina. I was alone, with no safety net, no plan beyond a dream to create. Seattle was a shock to the system. My studio apartment was a shoebox above a noisy bookstore, with peeling paint and a single window that looked out on a brick wall. I got a job at an art cafe, serving coffee to hipsters and artists by day, sketching by night under a flickering lamp. Some nights, I ate instant noodles, wondering if Uncle George was right. Maybe I was throwing it all away. But then I'd pick up my pencil, and the world would fade. I'd draw the Puget Sound at dawn, the Cascades in winter, the faces of strangers in the cafe. Each sketch was a step toward myself, a reminder that I was building something new. I found my tribe in Seattle's street art scene. A group of muralists took me in, teaching me to paint stories on city walls. One night, we transformed an abandoned warehouse into a canvas, covering it with a mural of the Olympic Mountains under a starry sky. Passers-by stopped, their faces lit with wonder. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. We'd paint until dawn, laughing and swapping stories, our hands stained with color. Leaving Palm Beach was like stepping off a cliff, but landing in Seattle was where I learned to fly. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and this is the story of how I built a life that was truly mine, life woven from art, love, and purpose, far from the gilded cage of my family's expectations. After escaping the Whitaker dynasty's suffocating world of wealth and tradition, I found myself in a city of rain and possibility, where every day was a chance to redefine what success meant. Our first big win was a virtual exhibit for a Portland gallery, which drew thousands of viewers online. Today, Canvas Collective supports artists from Brooklyn to Santa Fe, giving them a voice in a world that often overlooks them. As creative director, I shaped the vision, infusing it with the passion I'd once hidden from my family's judgment. But it's not just about the business. We started a scholarship fund for young artists, helping them chase dreams my family once called pointless. Last year, we funded a teenager from Tacoma, Mia, to attend her first gallery show. Watching her stand before her paintings, her eyes bright with pride, felt like seeing my younger self proof that dreams can take root, even in rocky soil. I teach art classes at a community center too, where kids like Mia paint their stories on canvas. One boy, Javier, painted a mural of his neighborhood, vibrant and unapologetic. "This is me," he said, grinning. "Those moments are my why. The reason I keep going. Our life isn't flashy. We live in a converted warehouse in Seattle, with high ceilings and endless light for painting. We reinvest most of our profits into Canvas Collective and community projects, choosing purpose over luxury. My paintings now hang in galleries across the West Coast, from Seattle to Portland, and last month, a collector in San Francisco bought one for a price that would have made Lillian gasp. But the real wealth is in the life we've built, rooted in love, creativity, and giving back. Michael and I balance each other, his pragmatism grounding my dreams, my vision fueling his code. We're not just partners in marriage. We're partners in a mission to make art accessible to everyone. Yet when Emily's wedding invitation arrived for her Napa Valley wedding, I felt the past creeping back. My family still saw me as the failure, the girl who ran away to chase a childish dream. They didn't know about Canvas Collective, about the artists we'd lifted up, about the life I'd created. I didn't need their approval, but the thought of facing them stirred a familiar ache. Michael saw it in my eyes one evening, as I stared at the invitation in our loft. "You're not that girl anymore," he said, his voice steady. "You're Sarah Whitaker, the woman who built this." He gestured to our studio, filled with half-finished canvases and lines of code on his screen. "Go for Emily, and for you." I nodded, clutching the opal necklace he'd given me, its shimmering stone a reminder of my own resilience. I packed a small painting for Amelia's scene of our childhood garden in Palm Beach, roses blooming under a summer sky. It was a piece of my heart, a gift to honor our bond. As I prepared for the wedding, I wrote in my journal, a habit I'd kept since leaving home. "I am enough," I wrote. "I've built a life that matters." Those words were my armor, preparing me to face the family who'd never understood me. This life, this journey, was about more than proving them wrong. It was about proving myself, trusting my instincts, following my passion, building something that mattered. Have you ever built a life from the ground up, against all odds? Maybe it was a career, a relationship, a dream you refused to let go. Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this new life faced its ultimate test when I walked back into the Whitaker world at Emily's wedding. With Michael by my side, I didn't just survive. I created something extraordinary. This is about the years that shaped me, the dreams we chased, and the legacy we're building one brushstroke, one line of code, one act of kindness at a time. This is a story of resilience, of finding your place, and of proving that the life you choose is the one that matters most. Stick with me, because the best is yet to come. When I arrived in Seattle at 22, I had little more than a suitcase, a few sketchbooks, and a stubborn belief in myself. My tiny apartment above a bookstore was a far cry from the Whitaker estate in Palm Beach, Florida, with its marble fountains and manicured gardens. But in that cramped space, with its creaky floors and single window, I felt free. I worked at an art cafe, serving coffee to dreamers like me, while at night I painted scenes of the Puget Sound, the Cascades, and the faces of strangers who passed through. Those early days where tough-rent was a stretch, rejection letters from galleries stung, and doubt whispered that maybe Uncle George was right. Maybe I'd thrown it all away. But every time I picked up a brush, I remembered my mother's words from our visits in Asheville, North Carolina. "Be you, Sarah. That's enough." Michael changed everything. We met at a gallery show where I displayed a single painting, a swirling abstract of the Pacific Ocean. He stood before it for ages, his brown eyes tracing every curve of color. "This feels like it's breathing," he said, and we talked until the world faded away. Michael, a software developer from Boise, Idaho, had fought his way through Stanford on scholarships, driven by a vision to blend technology with creativity. He saw my art not as a hobby, but as a force that could change lives. Our first date stretched from coffee to a midnight walk along Seattle's waterfront, where we dreamed of a world where artists didn't have to starve to succeed. With him, I felt seen, not as a Whitaker failure, but as a woman with something to give. We married a year later on a windswept beach in Oregon, the Pacific Ocean our witness. It was Simplano chandeliers, no guest list of society elites, just us and a handful of friends. My cousin Emily, the only Whitaker who'd stayed in touch, sent a set of watercolor paints with a note. "For your next adventure." My family didn't know. To them, I was still the runaway, lost to her foolish dreams. But in that moment, with Michael's hand in mine, I knew I'd found my home. Not a place, but a persona partner who believed in me as fiercely as I was learning to believe in myself. Together, we built Canvas Collective, a digital platform that empowers artists to share and sell their work without gatekeepers. It started in our loft, over late-night coffee and sketches scattered across the floor. I'd designed the interface, imagining how an artist might feel seeing their work online for the first time. Michael coded the back end, his fingers flying across the keyboard as we dreamed of a world where creativity wasn't a luxury. The plane touched down in California, and my heart was already racing. Napa Valley stretched out before me, a tapestry of golden vineyards and rolling hills. But all I could think about was the wedding waiting at the end of this journey. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and after 8 years of building a life in Seattle, far from the gilded expectations of my family in Palm Beach, Florida, I was stepping back into their world. Knowing he'd be there for the reception steadied me, but the weight of being alone in this sea of judgment was heavy. As I moved through the crowd, whispers followed. "Is that Edward's daughter?" a distant aunt murmured. "I heard she's living off handouts in Seattle." I kept my head high, scanning for Emily. Instead, I spotted Lillian, my stepmother, in a silver gown, holding court among a group of socialites. Her eyes met mine, and her smile was a blade. "Sarah," she said, air kissing my cheek. "What a surprise! We didn't think you'd come." Her words were laced with pity, as if my presence was an act of charity. "I wouldn't miss Emily's wedding," I replied, keeping my voice even. Lillian's gaze swept over me, searching for flaws. "You look healthy," she said, her eyes lingering on my dress. "Still doing that art thing, I assume?" Before I could answer, a familiar squeal cut through the garden. "Sarah!" Emily rushed toward me, radiant in a silk robe, her blonde hair half pinned for the ceremony. She threw her arms around me, and for a moment, the world softened. "You're here," she said, holding me at arm's length. "You look amazing. That necklace, it's stunning." Her warmth was a lifeline, but before we could talk more, her attendants whisked her away. "We'll catch up at the reception," she called, her smile bright. Lillian cleared her throat, her voice sharp. "Emily, darling, you need to finish getting ready." As Emily disappeared, Lillian turned to me, her tone dismissive. "She's marrying very well. David's a star in tech." The implication was clear. I'd never measure up. I found a quiet corner by a rose trellis, pulling out my phone to jot notes, a habit I'd learned to stay centered. "I am enough," I wrote. "I'm here for Emily." Those words were my shield, but the whispers kept coming. "That's the cousin who ran off," someone said. "Such a shame." I texted Michael again. "Lillian's as charming as ever. Hurry." His reply, "On my way. You're stronger than you know." I clung to that. But as guests moved toward the ceremony area, the weight of their judgment pressed harder. I was an outsider here, a ghost from a past they'd erased. This was more than a wedding. It was a reckoning. A chance to face the family who'd never seen me, to stand tall as the woman I'd become. I thought of Canvas Collective, the artists we'd lifted up, the murals we'd painted across Seattle. I thought of Michael, of our loft filled with light and dreams. I wasn't the girl they remembered. I was Sarah Whitaker, creative director, artist, wife, a woman who'd built a life of meaning. As I took my seat in Section E, I held on to that truth, ready to face whatever came next. Have you ever walked into a moment that tested your courage, where you had to stand alone before the people who doubted you? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this wedding unfolded, how facing my family pushed me to the edge, and how love and resilience pulled me through. This is a story of showing up, of holding your ground, and of proving that your worth isn't defined by others' eyes. Stick with me, because the journey is just beginning. My cousin Emily's wedding was no ordinary event. It was a Whitaker production, a dazzling display of wealth and tradition, and I was walking into it alone, armed with nothing but a teal dress, an opal necklace, and a painting I'd made for her. This was the day I'd face the family who'd called me a failure, and though fear gnawed at me, I was determined to show up for Emily and for myself. The decision to come hadn't been easy. That gold-embossed invitation had sat on my Seattle loft's counter for days, a reminder of the life I'd left behind. Emily, the only Whitaker who'd ever truly seen me, was marrying David Harper, a tech heir whose name lit up society pages. Her handwritten note, "Please come, Sarah. I miss you," had stirred memories of our childhood, of rose gardens and whispered dreams, but it also stirred fear. My family, Uncle George, Lillian, Grace, Ethan, and the rest still saw me as the black sheep, the dreamer who'd thrown away her birthright for paintbrushes and folly. They didn't know about Canvas Collective, the company I'd built with my husband, Michael, or the galleries showcasing my art from Seattle to Portland. To them, I was nothing, and now, I was walking into their judgment. Michael was my anchor. In our loft, as I wrestled with the invitation, he'd taken my hands, his brown eyes steady. "You're not going for their approval," he'd said. "You're going for Emily and for you." He'd join me for the reception, giving me space to navigate the ceremony alone. It was a perfect plan, but as I drove to the wedding venue, a historic estate draped in roses, and ivy, my stomach churned. I'd chosen a teal dress, elegant but not flashy, and the opal necklace Michael had given me, its shimmering stone catching the light like a promise. Around my neck, it felt like armor, a reminder of the life I'd built. In my bag, I carried a small painting for Emily, a scene of our childhood garden in Palm Beach, roses blooming under a summer sky. It was a piece of my heart, a gift to honor the bond that had survived years of distance. The venue was breathtaking. White roses adorned every surface, and crystal chandeliers sparkled above manicured gardens. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled, their laughter carrying on the breeze. I approached the check-in table, my heart pounding. The coordinator, a woman with a clipboard and a practiced smile, barely looked up. "Name?" she asked. "Sarah Whitaker," I said. Then added, "Emily's cousin." Her eyes flicked over my dress, lingering on the absence of a designer label. "Oh, Miss Whitaker," she said, her tone artificially sweet. "You're in Section E." I wasn't surprised. Section E was the back of the venue, far from the family tables, a clear signal of my place in their world. I clutched my necklace, its cool weight grounding me. I'd hoped to see Emily before the ceremony, to give her the painting and feel her warmth, but the coordinator waved me off. "The bride's busy with photos. Family shots were this morning." Of course, I hadn't been invited to those. The sting was sharp, but I pushed it down, pulling out my phone to text Michael. "Just got here. Section E, as expected. Wish you were here." His reply was instant. "You've got this, Sarah. I'm landing in 2 hours." The Napa Valley sun hung low, casting a golden glow over the wedding venue, but inside me, a storm was brewing. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and this was the moment I dreaded for 8 years facing my family, the Whitakers of Palm Beach, Florida, who'd branded me a failure, a dreamer who'd squandered her legacy. Emily's wedding, a lavish affair draped in roses and crystal, was more than a celebration. It was a battlefield where old wounds and sharp judgments waited to cut me down. The words hit like a slap, conjuring memories of my father, Edward, and his quiet disappointment. I wanted to scream that I'd built something real, that my art hung in galleries, that I'd found love and purpose. But I stayed silent, my heart racing as I jotted a note in my phonia habit to stay centered. "I am enough," I wrote. "I don't need their approval." Emily's arrival was a burst of light. "Sarah," she cried, rushing toward me in her silk robe, her blonde hair half pinned for the ceremony. She hugged me tightly, her warmth washing away the family's chill. "You're here," she said, holding me at arm's length. "That necklace is gorgeous, and you're glowing." Her joy was genuine, a reminder of our childhood in the rose garden, when we dreamed of lives beyond the Whitaker mold. "I brought you something," I started, reaching for the painting in my bag, but her attendant swooped in. "We'll talk at the reception," she promised, her smile bright as she was whisked away. Lillian's voice cut through. "Emily, darling, you're needed." As Emily vanished, Lillian turned to me, her tone icy. "She's marrying so well. David's a titan in tech." The message was clear. I'd never measure up. I retreated to a rose trellis, my phone open to my notes. "I'm here for Emily," I wrote, grounding myself. The whispers continued, a low hum of judgment. "That's the cousin who ran off," someone said. "Such a waste," I texted Michael. "Lillian and Grace are in top form. Hurry." His reply, "Landing soon. You're stronger than them." I clung to that, but as guests moved to the ceremony area, the weight of their eyes grew heavier. My seat in Section E felt like a punishment, a reminder of my plaisir lack of in this family. I thought of my mother Clara in Asheville, her voice urging me to be myself. I thought of Michael, of our loft in Seattle, of the life we'd built. I wasn't the girl they remembered. I was Sarah Whitaker, artist, creative director, a woman who'd found her own path. This moment was a test not of their approval, but of my resilience. Could I sit through this wedding, surrounded by their scorn, and still hold on to who I'd become? As the music swelled, signaling the ceremony's start, I straightened my shoulders, the opal necklace cool against my skin. I was here for Emily, for the girl who'd believed in me when no one else did. And I was here for myself, to prove that their judgment couldn't break me. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand tall in a room full of doubters, where every glance felt like a verdict? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this wedding pushed me to my limits, how the family's cruelty tested my strength, and how love and courage carried me through. This is a story of resilience, of facing the past, and of proving that your worth isn't defined by those who can't see you. Stick with me, because the storm is just beginning. As I stood in the garden, clutching my opal necklace and the painting I'd brought for Emily, I braced myself for the family's disdain. This wasn't just about showing up, it was about holding my ground, proving to myself that the life I'd built in Seattle was stronger than their scorn. The ceremony was moments away, and I was assigned to Section E, a seat so far back it might as well have been in another zip code. The coordinator's dismissive glance had already set the tone of my teal dress. Elegant, but not designer, marked me as an outsider. I'd hoped to see Emily before the vows, to give her the painting of our childhood garden in Palm Beach, a symbol of the bond that had survived years of silence. But the coordinator brushed me off. "Family photos were this morning," she'd said, her words a quiet jab. I wasn't family, not in their eyes. The exclusion stung, but I swallowed it, texting Michael, my husband, who was still hours away. "Section E feels like I'm invisible," I wrote. His reply was instant. "You're the brightest thing there. I'm coming." Knowing he'd join me for the reception kept me steady, but the weight of being alone pressed hard. As I moved through the pre-ceremony crowd, the whispers started. "Is that Edward's daughter?" a distant relative murmured. I thought she was off living like a hippie. Their words were like pinpricks, each one drawing a drop of the old shame I'd carried as a Whitaker. I kept my head high, my opal necklace catching the light like a quiet rebellion. Then I saw Lillian, my stepmother, in a silver gown that screamed wealth. Her eyes locked on mine, and her smile was a razor. "Sarah," she said, air kissing my cheek, her perfume cloying. "We didn't expect you'd make it." Her tone dripped with condescension, as if my presence was a curiosity, not a choice. "I'm here for Emily," I replied, my voice even despite the knot in my stomach. Lillian's gaze swept over me, searching for flaws. "Still painting, I presume?" she asked, her lips curling. "How quaint." Before I could respond, my stepsister, Grace, appeared at Lillian's side, her designer dress gleaming. "It must be so freeing, living out there in Seattle," she said, her voice syrupy. "No responsibilities, no expectations." The jab was clear. I was the failure who'd chosen a life of nothing. I forced a smile. "I love my work," I said, gripping my necklace. "It's more than enough." Their laughter was sharp, a sound that echoed the family dinners where my dreams were mocked. I wanted to tell them about Canvas Collective, the company Michael and I had built to empower artists, about the murals we'd painted across Seattle, about the kids I taught who found joy in art. But I held back. This wasn't the place, not yet. Then came Uncle George, the Whitaker patriarch, his presence as imposing as the Palm Beach estate he ruled. "Sarah," he boomed, drawing eyes from nearby guests. "Back from your little adventure, are we?" His words were a challenge, meant to remind everyone of my supposed folly. "I'm here for Emily," I said, meeting his gaze. He snorted, his whiskey glass glinting. "Always the dreamer. Your father would be ashamed." The Napa Valley ballroom glowed under crystal chandeliers, a vision of roses and silver. But for me, Sarah Whitaker, it was a crucible. Emily's wedding, a dazzling Whitaker affair, had brought me back to face the family I'd left behind in Palm Beach, Florida 8 years ago. I'd braced for their judgment, their whispers branding me a failure, but nothing prepared me for the moment when their disdain erupted into public humiliation. I gripped my opal necklace, its weight a reminder of the life I'd built with Michael in Seattle. "I'm here for Emily," I said, meeting his gaze. He snorted. "Emily's too kind, always taking in strays." Then it happened. His hand shot out, grabbing my necklace. "What's this?" he sneered, yanking hard. The chain snapped, and the opal pendant hit the marble floor with a heartbreaking clink. "Cheap trinket," he spat, his face purple with rage. "Just like you, a waste of space." The ballroom went still, the music fading to a hum. All eyes were on me, some shocked, others smug, as if they'd been waiting for this. Lillian stepped forward, her voice low but venomous. "She's lucky we even let her in." Nathan laughed, a cruel sound that rippled through the crowd. Emily across the room froze, her face pale with horror. But she was too far to intervene. I bent slowly, my movements deliberate, and picked up the pendant, its shimmering stone thankfully intact. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "You'll regret this," I said, looking from Uncle George to Lillian to Nathan. The words weren't a threat, but a promise, a quiet vow that their cruelty wouldn't define me. Nathan scoffed. "Regret what? Your finger paintings?" The crowd tittered, their laughter a chorus of complicity. I stood alone, the broken necklace in my palm, the weight of their judgment pressing down. But something inside me shifted. I wasn't the girl they'd mocked years ago, the one who'd fled Palm Beach in tears. I was Sarah Whitaker, creative director of Canvas Collective, an artist whose work hung in galleries, a woman who'd built a life of meaning with Michael. This wasn't just about a necklace. It was about every moment I'd been made to feel small of every dinner where my dreams were dismissed, every glance that said I wasn't enough. I thought of my mother, Clara, in Asheville, her voice urging me to be myself. I thought of Emily, our childhood dreams in the Rose Garden. I thought of the kids I taught in Seattle, their paintings a testament to courage. I'd faced rejection, doubt, and loneliness to build my life. I wouldn't let them break me now. As I stood there, the crowd's laughter fading, I felt a strange calm. This was my breaking point, but not in the way they expected. It was the moment I chose to stand taller, to claim my worth in the face of their scorn. The ballroom doors were still closed. Michael not yet here, but I didn't need him to fight this battle. I'd been fighting it my whole life. I tucked the pendant into my palm, my voice low but clear. "You don't know me," I said, my eyes locked on Uncle George. "But you will." The crowd shifted, their murmurs uncertain. Emily pushed through, her wedding gown billowing, but she was still too far. This was my moment, my stand, my truth. The storm had reached its peak, and I was still standing. Have you ever faced a moment where someone tried to tear you down, where you had to find strength you didn't know you had? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this wedding turned from a crucible to a triumph. How love and resilience rewrote the story my family tried to tell. This is about standing up, speaking truth, and proving that no one can take your worth unless you let them. Stick with me, because the tide is about to turn. As I stood clutching my broken opal necklace, the weight of their cruelty threatened to crush me. This was the breaking point not just of a chain, but of a lifetime of silence. Yet, in that moment, I found a strength I didn't know I had. A resolve to stand tall for the woman I'd become in Seattle, for Emily, and for every dream I'd fought to claim. The ceremony had been beautiful, Emily radiant as she vowed her life to David Harper, a tech heir whose name echoed in society pages. I'd sat in Section E, the Whitaker equivalent of exile, swallowing the sting of exclusion. Now, at the reception, the ballroom buzzed with laughter and champagne, but my seat at a back table with elderly strangers and David's distant cousins felt like a deliberate slight. I checked my phone, counting the minutes until Michael, my husband, arrived from the airport. 10 minutes out, his latest text read. "Hang in there." His words were a lifeline, but the air around me grew heavier with every passing moment. The first blow came from my cousin Nathan, his face flushed from too many drinks. He stumbled to my table, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Still scribbling pictures, Sarah?" He slurred, his friends snickering. "Bet you're hawking sketches on the boardwalk." His words echoed the family's old taunts, the ones that had driven me from Palm Beach. I kept my eyes on my plate, my voice calm. "My art's my career," I said. He laughed, a harsh bark. "Career? That dress looks like it came from a clearance rack." The nearby table erupted in giggles, their glances sharp as knives. My cheeks burned, but I held my composure, jotting a note in my phone to stay grounded. "I am enough," I wrote, a mantra against their venom. I excused myself to the powder room, splashing cold water on my wrists to quell the rising panic. A mentor's advice echoed in my mind. "Their words can't touch your truth." I texted Michael. "Nathan's on a rampage. Hurry." His reply, "5 minutes. You're stronger than this." I took a deep breath, straightened my teal dress, and returned to the ballroom, only to find Lillian and Grace waiting like vultures. "You look flushed, Sarah," Lillian said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Is this all too much for you?" Grace, in her sleek designer gown, chimed in. "It's so brave to come alone. Must be hard. Being so different." Their smiles were razor thin, their words a calculated strike at my heart. "I'm not alone," I said quietly. "My husband's on his way." Lillian's eyebrows arched, her surprise tinged with skepticism. "Husband? How? Unexpected." Before I could respond, Uncle George appeared, his presence a storm cloud. His bespoke tuxedo and whiskey glass couldn't mask the contempt in his eyes. So the prodigal niece returns, he boomed, drawing a crowd. 8 years? And you show up for the free champagne? His voice carried, silencing nearby conversations. The Napa Valley ballroom was a frozen tableau, the air thick with the aftermath of Uncle George's cruelty. My opal necklace lay broken in my palm, its chain snapped by his rage, his words, a waste of space, still echoing in the silent crowd. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and in that moment, surrounded by the judgmental eyes of my Palm Beach family, I stood at the edge of everything I'd fought to become. Emily's wedding had turned into a crucible, my family's scorn a fire meant to burn me down. This opal, he said, holding it up, is one of a kind. Worth more than most of the cars parked outside. Gasps rippled through the room. Lillian's smile froze, her eyes darting to reassess me. Nathan's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. Emily stepped forward, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. Uncle George ripped it off her neck, she said, glaring at him. He called her a waste of space. Michael's face hardened, though his tone remained measured. I see. He turned to Uncle George, his eyes unflinching. I think an apology is in order. To Sarah Whitaker, whose paintings hang in the private collections of museum curators and tech pioneers, whose last piece sold for more than your annual bonus. The silence was deafening. The crowd shifted, their murmurs turning to awe. David nodded, his excitement breaking through. Wait, you're the ones behind the $25 million art tech fund? Our firm invested in your latest startup. It's why our quarter looked so good. The pieces fell into place, and I watched the family's faces change. Lillian's eyes widened, recalculating. Nathan looked like he'd been slapped. Uncle George's jaw tightened, his anger mixing with embarrassment. They'd mocked me as a failure, but Michael's presence, his words, revealed the truth. I was Sarah Whitaker, co-founder of Canvas Collective, a woman who'd built a life of impact and beauty. He slipped a folded document from his poetic contract for our latest investment deal, a quiet flex of our success. Sarah oversees our portfolio, he said casually. She's the one you'd need to talk to. The implication wasn't lost on anyone. Emily's voice cut through, fierce and clear. Sarah's not just my cousin, she's my sister. The only one who ever saw me for me. Not what I could do for the family name. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. I'm so glad you're here. David took her hand, nodding. Emily keeps your painting of the Golden Gate Bridge on her desk. It's why I pushed our firm to back Canvas Collective. The crowd's whispers grew, a tide of realization washing over them. The girl they dismissed was a force, a visionary, a success beyond their narrow measure. Michael's hand squeezed mine, a silent reminder that we were in this together. He'd walked into a room of vipers and turned it into a stage for truth. But this wasn't just about him, it was about us. About the life we'd built in Seattle. The artists we'd lifted. The kids we'd taught to dream. I thought of Mia, the teenager whose gallery show we'd funded, her smile brighter than any Whitaker gala. I thought of my mother, Clara, in Asheville, her belief in me a foundation I'd never lost. This moment was a victory, not over them, but for me, for the woman who dared to choose her own path. The family's masks began to crack, but I didn't need their approval. I had Michael, Emily, and a life that mattered. As the music resumed, I stood taller, the broken necklace, a badge of resilience, not defeat. This was my story, and it was far from over. But then the ballroom doors swung open, and Michael walked in, my husband, my anchor, and the man who would rewrite this story. His entrance wasn't just a moment, it was a turning point, a revelation that shifted the ground beneath us all, proving that the life I'd built in Seattle was stronger than their disdain. Have you ever had someone step in to remind you of your worth, or a moment when truth silenced doubters? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this wedding reshaped my family's view, how love and courage rewrote the narrative. This is about standing up, shining bright, and proving that your life is your greatest masterpiece. Stick with me, because the best is yet to come. I'd faced the Whitakers' venom alone, their laughter and whispers cutting deeper than I'd expected. Uncle George had torn my necklace, calling it a cheap trinket, while Lillian and Nathan piled on, their words a public execution of the girl they thought I still was. I'd stood my ground, my voice steady as I warned them they'd regret their cruelty. But inside, I was trembling. The crowd's murmurs, Emily's horrified face across the room, the weight of 8 years of estrangement, it was almost too much. I clutched the pendant, its shimmering opal a reminder of the life Michael and I had created, and prayed he'd arrive soon. His last text, "just parked," was my lifeline, but as the seconds stretched, I felt the family's judgment closing in. Then he appeared. Michael stepped into the ballroom, and the world shifted. He wore a charcoal suit, tailored to perfection, his dark hair catching the chandelier light. His presence wasn't loud or arrogant, but it commanded attention, a quiet confidence that silenced the whispers. Heads turned, conversations paused, and I felt a rush of relief so profound it nearly brought me to tears. His brown eyes found mine across the room, and his smile, warm, steady, unwavering, was a promise that I wasn't alone anymore. He crossed the floor with purpose, nodding politely to curious guests, his gaze never leaving me. When he reached my side, he took my hand, the one clutching the broken necklace, and kissed my cheek. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying in the hushed room. Traffic was a nightmare. The tension in the air was palpable, but Michael's calm cut through it like a blade. He noticed the pendant in my palm, his expression darkening. "What happened?" he asked, his tone soft but edged with steel. Before I could answer, Emily broke through the crowd, her wedding gown billowing, her face a mix of distress and relief. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. Then she saw Michael and gasped. "You're Michael Carson from Canvas Collective?" David, her new husband, joined us, his eyes wide with recognition. "The Michael Carson? Your platform's revolutionized art tech." "I'm a huge fan," the crowd murmured, confusion spreading as the Whitakers tried to make sense of this stranger who'd upended their narrative. Michael shook David's hand, his smile modest but warm. "Thank you, but Sarah's the heart of it. She's our creative director, and her vision drives everything we do. Her art's in galleries from Seattle to Portland, and collectors are starting to take notice." The words landed like a thunderclap. Uncle George, still red-faced from his outburst, sputtered, "Creative director? What nonsense is this?" Michael's gaze was cool as he examined the broken necklace. The Napa Valley Ballroom, once a stage for my family's cruelty, had transformed into something else entirely, a space where truth had cracked their carefully crafted facade. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and after Michael's arrival turned Emily's wedding from a crucible of humiliation into a moment of triumph, the dynamics of my Palm Beach family began to shift. Her smile was a spark, a promise of something new. Emily was the heart of this moment. During a quiet pause, she pulled me aside, her wedding gown shimmering under the chandeliers. "I should have stood up for you sooner," she said, tears in her eyes. "I was scared of them, of losing my place." "But you're so brave." I hugged her tightly, my throat tight. "You stood up now," I said. "That's what matters. We promised to stay close, to rebuild the bond we'd lost to years of distance." Later, I gave her the painting I'd brought, a scene of our childhood rose garden in Palm Beach, blooming under a summer sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tracing the canvas. "Just like you." That moment, more than any apology, felt like healing. The family's attempts to reconnect didn't end at the wedding. Back in Seattle, emails and calls trickled in. Uncle George sent a stiff message, not quite an apology but a veiled pitch for investment opportunities. "We should discuss business," he wrote, as if Michael's success was his to claim. I forwarded it to our team with a note. "Handle with caution." Lillian sent an ornate vase, gaudy and out of place in our loft. It went straight to a charity auction. Nathan texted once, a vague offer to grab coffee if he was ever in Seattle, which I ignored. But Lily's emails were different. She sent photos of her paintings, bold, vibrant abstracts that showed real promise. I replied with encouragement, sending her art books and links to online courses. "Keep going," I wrote. You've got something special. Her enthusiasm reminded me why I'd started Canvas Collective to give artists like her a chance to shine. Inspired by the wedding, I organized a charity art exhibit in Seattle, inviting Emily to showcase her photography alongside local artists. She flew in, and we spent hours curating the show, laughing like we were kids again. The event raised funds for our scholarship program, helping young artists like Mia, the Tacoma teen whose gallery show we'd funded. It was a reminder that my legacy wasn't tied to the Whitaker name, but to the lives I touched, the dreams I helped grow. Emily and I made plans to visit each other, her new home in New York, a bridge between our worlds. "I'm done letting them control me," she said over coffee, her eyes fierce. "You showed me I can choose my own path." This shift wasn't about their approval. It was about my own clarity. I'd spent years proving myself, partly to silence their doubts, but the wedding taught me something deeper. My worth didn't depend on their validation. The life Michael and I had, Buell Tour Loft filled with canvases, our company lifting artists, our love grounding us, was enough. I thought of my mother, Clara, in Asheville, her belief in me a quiet strength. I thought of the kids I taught, their paintings a testament to courage. The Whitakers could keep their wealth and their judgment. I had something better, a life of purpose. As the reception wound down, I danced with Michael under the chandeliers, his hand warm in mine. "You were incredible," he murmured. "You didn't need me to win this." I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. "I needed you to remind me I already had." The opal necklace, restrung, caught the light, a symbol of resilience, not ruin. This was my victory, not their surrender, but my freedom. The broken opal necklace, now restrung on a spare chain Michael carried, hung around my neck not as a mark of defeat, but as a badge of resilience. As I sat at the head table, invited by Emily's fierce loyalty, I watched the Whitakers' world realign, their scorn giving way to a mix of awe, opportunism, and grudging respect. Have you ever seen a relationship shift when truth breaks through, or chosen to let go of those who can't see your worth? Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this journey ended, how I found closure and a new beginning. This is about choosing your path, building bridges that matter, and proving that your life is your own to define. Stick with me, because the story's not over yet. This wasn't just about their change of heart. It was about my own, about choosing which bridges to rebuild and which to let burn, all while holding fast to the life I'd built in Seattle. Michael's entrance had been a revelation. His quiet confidence, his revelation of Canvas Collective's success, and his defense of my worth had silenced the room. Uncle George's rage, Lillian's condescension, Nathan's mockery, they'd crumbled under the weight of reality. I wasn't the failure they'd painted. I was a creative director, an artist whose work hung in galleries, a woman who'd co-founded a company reshaping the art world. Emily's public stand, calling me her sister, and David's acknowledgement of our business's impact had sealed it. The crowd's whispers turned from judgment to curiosity, and as the music resumed, the family's masks began to slip. Emily's insistence that we join the head table was a quiet revolution. "It's my wedding," she'd said, her voice firm as she stared down Uncle George's objections. "Sarah belongs here." We sat beside her and David, the opal necklace catching the light, a symbol of the life Michael and I had forged. Suddenly, relatives who'd ignored me for years found reasons to stop by. "Sarah, we must catch up," said an aunt who hadn't spoken to me since I left Palm Beach. Her smile was forced, her eyes calculating. Lillian, ever the social chameleon, made 3 attempts to invite us to Sunday brunch, her tone dripping with newfound warmth. "We've missed you, Sarah," she said, as if she hadn't called me a waste of space hours earlier. I nodded politely, my responses measured, my heart guarded. Uncle George was a different story. He sat at a nearby table, his face a storm of anger and humiliation, his whiskey glass empty. His silence spoke volume-ish, wasn't ready to admit defeat, but he couldn't ignore the shift. Others were less restrained. My cousin Nathan, sobered by the turn of events, approached awkwardly, muttering something about misunderstandings. I let it pass, uninterested in his half-hearted remorse. But then came Lily, my youngest cousin, just 16, her eyes wide with a sincerity the others lacked. "I saw your murals online," she whispered. glancing nervously at her mother across the room. I paint too, but Mom says it's a waste of time. Seeing you, it makes me think I can do it. Her words hit me hard. A reminder of my own teenage self. Hiding sketchbooks from Lillian's scorn. If it brings you joy, it's never a waste, I told her. Send me your work. I'd love to see it. The Seattle skyline welcomed me home, its familiar silhouette a quiet embrace after the storm of Emily's wedding in Napa Valley. I'm Sarah Whitaker, and the journey that began with a gold-embossed invitation had reshaped my world. 8 years after leaving the suffocating wealth of my Palm Beach family, I'd faced their scorn, stood tall against their cruelty, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. When she flew to Seattle for our charity art exhibit, we curated it together, her black and white cityscapes hanging beside local artists' work. The event raised thousands for our scholarship fund, but the real gift was our laughter, our shared history blooming anew. The family's attempts to reconnect were a mixed bag. Uncle George's email, a stiff not-quite apology, hinted at business deals. We could collaborate, he wrote, as if my success was his to claim. I replied politely, keeping the door ajar, but my boundaries firm. Lillian sent a gaudy crystal vase, which I donated to a charity auction, its proceeds funding art supplies for kids. Nathan's vague offer to catch up went unanswered. His remorse felt like a play for relevance. But Lily, my teenage cousin, was different. Her emails brimmed with passion, her paintings growing bolder with each one she shared. I sent her a sketchbook and a note. Your art is your voice. Never stop. Her reply, a shy, you're my hero, brought tears to my eyes. If I could light a spark in her, the wedding's pain was worth it. Michael and I took a weekend to reflect, driving to Olympic National Park, where we'd once vowed to build a life together. As we walked through moss-covered forests, the Pacific's roar in the distance, he took my hand. You've been carrying them for years, he said, his voice gentle. The wedding let you put them down. He was right. I'd worked so hard to prove the Whitakers wrong, but the real victory was proving myself right, trusting my instincts, following my passion, building a life that mattered. The family's judgment had been a shadow, but in Napa, I'd stepped into the light. It wasn't about forgiveness, I told him, the wind catching my words. It was about freedom. Back home, I painted more freely, my canvases bolder, my colors unafraid. A gallery in San Francisco offered me a solo show, a milestone I'd once dreamed of as a girl hiding sketchbooks from Lillian. I thought of my mother Clara in Asheville, her belief in me a quiet strength. I called her, sharing the news, and her laughter was a gift. You were always enough, she said, and for the first time I believed it fully. The opal necklace, now a keepsake, wasn't a reminder of pain, but of power, of standing tall, of speaking truth, of choosing my own measure of success. This new chapter wasn't about erasing the past, but reframing it. The Whitakers' wealth, their expectations, their cruelty, they'd shaped me, but they didn't define me. My wealth was in Michael's steady love, Emily's renewed friendship, Lily's budding art, the kids I taught, the artists we lifted through Canvas Collective. It was in the blog posts that inspired strangers, the murals that colored Seattle's streets, the quiet moments in our loft where dreams took shape. Success wasn't a mansion or a name. It was a life built on courage, connection, and creativity. So, friends, what's your new chapter? Have you ever faced a moment that set you free, that showed you your worth is yours to define? Maybe it was leaving a place, a person, a past that didn't see you. Share your story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about living boldly, loving deeply, and chasing dreams that light up the world. This is a story of resilience, of finding home in yourself, and of proving that the life you build is the one that matters most. Back in our loft, with its high ceilings and light-filled studio, I found myself at the start of a new chapter defined not by proving others wrong, but by living my truth. This is the story of closure, of building a legacy on my own terms, and of discovering that true wealth lies in love, purpose, and the courage to be yourself. Thank you for listening, and here's to writing your own story, one brave step at a time. The wedding had been a reckoning. Uncle George's rage, Lillian's venom, Nathan's mockery, they'd tried to tear me down, breaking my opal necklace and calling me a waste. But Michael's arrival, his quiet strength revealing the success of Canvas Collective, had turned the tide. Emily's fierce loyalty, naming me her sister, had anchored me. The family's shift from disdain to opportunism was less a victory than a mirror, reflecting their shallow measure of worth. As we flew back to Seattle, the opal pendant repaired and displayed in a shadow box in our bedroom became a symbol not of their cruelty, but of my resilience. It reminded me of the girl who'd left Palm Beach and the woman I'd become, an artist, a leader, a wife, a dreamer who'd built a life of meaning. Our loft was a sanctuary. My easel held a new canvas, a bold abstract of Napa's vineyards, its colors vibrant with the emotions of that day. Michael and I slipped back into our rhythm, balancing Canvas Collective's growth with our community work. We launched a mentorship program for young artists, pairing them with professionals to hone their craft. I spent weekends teaching at a community center, guiding kids like Mia, the Tacoma teen whose gallery show we'd funded. Her latest painting, a vivid portrait of her grandmother, hung in our office, a testament to the power of giving voice to dreams. "You believed in me," she'd said, her hug fierce. Those moments were my wealth, far richer than any Whitaker trust fund. Emily's wedding had sparked something new. Inspired by our reunion, I started a blog, sharing my journey from Palm Beach to Seattle, from rejection to resilience. The first post, about the wedding, struck a chord, going viral as readers shared their own stories of defying expectations. "Your story gave me courage to leave a toxic job," one commenter wrote. Another said, "I told my family I'm choosing art school. Thank you." Each message was a reminder that my path wasn't just mine. It was a beacon for others. I poured my heart into the blog, writing about the murals we painted across Seattle, the artists we supported, the kids whose eyes lit up when they held a brush. It became a space to inspire, to show that success isn't a mansion in Palm Beach, but a life that feels true. Emily and I rebuilt our bond, stronger than ever. She and David moved to New York, a city closer to Seattle, and we made plans to visit, dreaming of gallery hops and late-night talks over coffee. Her emails were filled with photos from their honeymoon and updates on her photography, which she'd begun showcasing through Canvas Collective. "You showed me I can be more than a Whitaker," she wrote, and I felt a surge of pride. We'd both broken free, choosing paths that honored our hearts. The story of Sarah Whitaker is one of courage, resilience, and the quiet power of choosing your own path. It began in the gilded cage of the Whitaker estate in Palm Beach, Florida, where Sarah, born into a dynasty of old money and rigid expectations, was marked as different from the start. With her mother Clara's hazel eyes and artistic spirit, she stood apart in a family of blue-eyed financiers, her dreams of painting dismissed as childish folly. Back in Seattle, Sarah's life bloomed. Canvas Collective grew, her blog inspired thousands, and her mentorship program lifted young artists. She and Emily rebuilt their friendship, curating a charity exhibit together, while Lily's paintings became a source of pride. The family's overtures, Uncle George's calculated email, Lillian's gaudy vaseware met with polite distance, their approval no longer needed. The opal necklace, repaired and displayed in a shadow box, symbolized not pain, but power, the courage to stand, to create, to choose. A trip to Olympic National Park with Michael, where they'd once vowed to build a life, brought clarity. The wedding hadn't been about proving them wrong, but proving herself right. Success wasn't a Whitaker mansion. It was a loft filled with canvases, a love that grounded her, a legacy of lifting others. The deepest lesson from Sarah's journey is this: your worth is not defined by others' judgments, but by the courage to live authentically. The Whitakers measured success in wealth and status, but Sarah found it in love, creativity, and impact. Her story teaches us that breaking free from toxic expectations, whether from family, society, or our own doubts, requires faith in ourselves. It's about choosing the hard path, the one that feels true, even when it's lonely. Sarah's resilience, her refusal to let cruelty dim her light, shows that healing comes not from others' apologies, but from claiming your own story. For us today, this means listening to our inner voice, the one that whispers our dreams despite the noise of doubt. If you're trapped in a job that dims your spirit, take a step, learn a skill, write that novel, paint that canvas. If family or friends belittle your choices, set boundaries, seek those who see you, like Michael saw Sarah. Start small, join a community, share your work, mentor someone who needs your light. Sarah's blog, her murals, her mentorship, They began as single acts of courage. Yours can too. In a world that demands conformity, dare to be different. Your worth isn't in others' eyes, but in the life you build, the love you give, the dreams you chase. Sarah's story is a call to action. Live boldly, love fiercely, create unapologetically. Whether you're 18 or 55, in a city or a small town, your path is yours to shape. Share your story in the comments below. How have you defied expectations to live your truth? Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales of courage and heart. This is about finding your place, writing your chapter, and proving that the life you choose is the one that matters most. Thank you for listening, and here's to your own new beginning. The divorce of her parents when she was 11, her father Edward's dominance, and the arrival of her stepmother Lillian with her polished children, Grace and Ethan, pushed Sarah to the margins. Only her cousin Emily, with her warmth and shared childhood dreams in the rose garden, offered solace. But the weight of the Whitaker name-its demand for conformity, its scorn for her passion was suffocating. At 22, Sarah made a choice that would define her life. She packed a suitcase, left Palm Beach, and boarded a bus to Seattle, Washington, chasing a dream she could barely name. In Seattle, Sarah found freedom, but it came at a cost. Her tiny apartment, her job at an art cafe, her nights sketching under a flickering lamp were a far cry from the Whitaker wealth. Yet, in that struggle, she discovered herself. Joining a street art collective, she painted murals that transformed city walls into stories of hope, her hands stained with color, her heart alight with purpose. It was there she met Michael, a software developer whose belief in her vision matched her own. Their love, sealed on an Oregon beach with the Pacific as their witness, became the foundation of Canvas Collective, a platform that empowered artists to share their work with the world. As creative director, Sarah poured her soul into it, mentoring young artists like Mia, funding scholarships, and teaching kids to paint their dreams. Her art hung in galleries from Seattle to Portland, a testament to a life built on passion, not privilege. But the past doesn't let go easily. When Emily's wedding invitation arrived, a gold-embossed summons to Napa Valley, California, it stirred a storm of fear and resolve. Sarah, now 34, knew returning meant facing the family who'd branded her a failure, the black sheep who'd thrown away her birthright. With Michael's support, she chose to go, not for their approval, but for Emily and for herself. Clad in a teal dress and an opal necklace, carrying a painting of their childhood garden, Sarah walked into a world of roses and chandeliers, only to be met with whispers and scorn. Assigned to Section E, excluded from family photos, she endured Lillian's condescension, Grace's jabs, and Nathan's drunken mockery. The breaking point came when Uncle George, the family patriarch, ripped her necklace and called her a waste, his words a public execution of her worth. Yet, in that moment of humiliation, Sarah stood tall, her quiet warning. "You'll regret this," a spark of defiance. Michael's arrival was the flame. Striding into the ballroom, his tailored suit and unshakable confidence silenced the crowd. His revelation of Canvas Collective's success, Sarah's role as creative director, and the opal's true value shattered the family's narrative. Emily's fierce stand, naming Sarah her sister, and David's admiration for their work cemented the truth. Sarah wasn't a failure. She was a force. The family shift was swift. Lillian's forced warmth, Nathan's awkward retreat, Uncle George's grudging silence, but Sarah saw through their opportunism. Only Lily, her teenage cousin, offered sincerity, her budding art a bridge to a new connection. Emily's renewed bond, sealed with promises to stay close, was the wedding's true gift.